Welcome to Monday and welcome to Your Daily Detroit. It's episode 841 of the podcast for September 27th, 2021. I'm Jer Stays. The turning of the leaves this year doesn't just mean it's fall. It's also Detroit election season. See, I think leadership matters, and the city has a lot of challenges and a lot of opportunities. But what's next? Well, that future is truly in our hands. My goal here is to provide a space for voters for policies over personal attacks, and with so little media coverage of local races, I feel like it's more important than ever to talk about ideas when it comes to candidates for mayor or council. My hope is that whether you decide to vote for a candidate you hear here, or the conversation makes you think, well, maybe not, that you walk away more well-informed. That's how democracy works best. So if you are a candidate for office, whether it's in the city or in the suburbs, reach out, dailydetroit@gmail.com. We'll try to get you scheduled as soon as possible. And don't worry, not every episode is going to be all about this, but we'll spend a little bit more time with it in the run-up to November. There is no particular order to this. This is just whenever we can get folks. So today we will start with L Elrick. He's running for Council District 4 on Detroit's east side. Joining me at the table at the Grand Hotel, host of the Soul of Detroit podcast, Pulitzer Prize-winning journalist, and candidate for Detroit City Council for District 4, L Elrick. Welcome to Daily Detroit.
It's great to be here, although I technically am not a journalist anymore. I had to give up my job and possibly my career to try and get elected on the east side to bring honest change to Detroit City Hall. But after 20 years of trying to do it as a reporter, I thought maybe I'll try and do it as someone who actually has a seat at the table.
Why make that change? Because, I got to imagine being on TV most days and all that stuff, it's not a bad gig.
It's not a bad gig. I work with some great people. We did some terrific stories, but it just felt like those stories are having less and less impact. And I'll give you a prime example. It was several years ago that I exposed Gabe Leland as someone who was not an ethical councilman, who was voting for millions of dollars worth of contracts for his girlfriend's company. Then I exposed him as someone who was involved in a scheme to be paid for his influence on city council. No one said anything.
That stunned me.
No one did anything.
And it didn't stick like I thought it would, like with the public and things. Why do you think that is?
I don't know. Although my theory is that we have become almost inured to corruption, that rather than being the witnesses to the end of the culture of corruption that U.S. Attorney Barb McQuade famously decreed after announcing indictments against Kwame Kilpatrick, we actually have become used to it. And we changed our constitution, the city charter, to make it easier for city council members to remove an elected official who was deemed to be unfit, criminal, or just basically betraying the public trust. And with that new tool, the city council had a perfect opportunity to use it and did not use it. So my plan is, if I can't convince people to take action as someone who tells the truth, I'm going to give myself an opportunity to take action with one of 9 votes. When Leland finally pleaded guilty, or reached a plea deal to plead guilty to misconduct in office, I called for his resignation. I said, city council, if they can't make him resign, they should remove his staff. They should remove his city car. They should remove his committee assignments. They should basically make him nothing other than a dummy sitting there at the city council table. No one did anything. And so I'm trying to put myself in a position to make sure that the people of Detroit have the best representation they can get, and that they should know at least one person on city council will not put up with any of the baloney that we've had to put up for far too long.
Over the years, the council, I remember the days when a council member was bribed for sausage. The council has gotten this reputation. If I had the Dropbox with me, I'd say, with no greater hive of scum and villainy from like Star Wars or something. And it's not good for the city at all to have that reputation with its council.
Yeah, it's not exactly the cantina on is it Tatooine or
one of those,
something like that. Yeah, but we have had some bad actors on there. We've had multiple city council members over the years convicted of various crimes. Of course, Kay Everett, allegedly was bribed with 17 pounds of sausage. I once did a charity gig where one of the thank yous for the host was free sausage, and I never even cashed it in. So you can't get me with 17 pounds of sausage. You can't get me with
What about 18?
free sausage.
19?
No sausage.
No sausage?
There's not enough sausage in the world to make me betray the people of Detroit. I gave up my job. I gave up my salary to do this, so I'm not doing it for the money. I'm doing it because I want to see somebody on city council who wants to get some stuff done and not just clean things up. I want to see action in the neighborhoods. I want to see us get more and better police so that we have safety, so we can stop some of the speeding in our neighborhoods. And frankly, I want to make sure that people who own property in the city are good landlords. You know, if you're renting a house to somebody that doesn't respect their neighbors, if you've rented a house as a speculator and you're just letting it crumble in a neighborhood, that has a deleterious effect on the entire neighborhood. If you're that person, you should be very worried about what's going to happen when I get to City Hall, because I am coming for you, sir.
It's L Elrick's version of don't be that guy.
That's right.
Don't be that guy. So let's get into the weeds. First off, let's talk about District 4. For listeners who might not be familiar, or listeners who live there will be like, oh, of course. But we have a wider audience, so I want to make sure to set the table. District 4, East Side, Jefferson, Chalmers, that whole area of town. I have a lot of familiarity with it. My family, like my great-grandmother grew up on Dickerson.
Oh, yeah.
And like I remember when the Vanity Ballroom still had a sign, and I used to take the 25 Jefferson to go to Belle Isle and take the Belle Isle bus when I was a kid. So East Side I know well, but for
you got roots.
Yeah. So why did you decide to live in District 4 when you moved there? What, about turn of the century, 2000?
Yeah, well,
1999, something like that.
You're making me sound older than I feel, but yeah, it was 1999.
Veteran young guy, ML.
That's
Veteran
it.
Young guy.
I aged, I wouldn't say very well, but I'm deceptively old. I grew up just across the border in Grosse Pointe Park on Nottingham, on the 1300 block of Nottingham. My first job that didn't involve delivering newspapers was at Johnson's Milk Depot on Mack between Nottingham and Beaconsfield. When I was in high school, I got a job at the Sherwin-Williams at Kensington and East Warren. So I've been living or working in the district since before it was the district. I've raised my family there. And so I'm an East Side guy. I've always been an East Side guy. And when we went to districts, that gave someone like me an opportunity to think that they could be elected and make a difference in a specific geographical part of the city where you know the place, you love the place, and you feel like you can contribute to the place. So, I thought a little bit about running citywide, but in the end, the money, the amount of ground you have to cover, and I just thought, as a new councilman, I want to have as much impact as possible. And so to do it in a more compact area, and having said that the district is sprawling, that I should start in a place where I might be able to make a difference and then, see what comes next.
Yeah, I mean, Detroit City Council District is the size of a mid-sized suburb.
There's 100,000 people in our jurisdiction, and we go from the Grosse Pointe Harper Woods border to McClellan, which is on the other side of the Chrysler plant. We go from Gratiot all the way to the water. As someone who's knocked on 2,000 doors since January, it's big.
Yeah.
It's real big.
It is real big. So why don't we dive into a few different issues? Number one at the top of the list, I think for people, is flooding. Jefferson Chalmers is a beautiful area of town. There's so much great history there. Like I think it's Marlboro, which is the brick street that leads to what used to be the racetrack. There, the horse racetrack, that's what that was. Like, there's so many beautiful vistas. I'm a big fan. Like, I will go and like hang out at AB Ford Park with my dog. Like, it's a beautiful area, but also it faces a lot of water issues. Same with, East English Village, some other parts like that. What could the city do to deal with flooding in a way now? Because like climate change, at least in my book, is a real thing. It's not going anywhere, but since it's not going anywhere, we've got to do something. But I look on the other side, and I look at the amount of infrastructure improvements we need to make. I touched on this a bit with Antoine Bryant with the city of Detroit. Those are big dollar items that take a long time to roll out. Are there things that could be done now? Are there reforms that could be done now to make things better in District 4?
Absolutely. So far, the city's approach to this has seemed to be setting us up to rename the neighborhood Atlantis. And I just don't think that's acceptable. I do not want a lost city under the water on the east side. So what I've proposed, and this is a proposal we came up with the eve of the flood, the June 25th to June 26th weather event, they call it, which to a lot of people just means a ton of rain.
We have weather events and ground shifts in Detroit. Very vaguely named things.
Yeah, what does that mean? It means it's bad news, whatever you want to call it, whatever euphemism you choose. But I've lived on East Otter Drive for 22 years. That was the first time my basement flooded in a significant way. We had 2.5 feet of water, and that's not acceptable, particularly to those people south of Jefferson who have taken flooding as almost a ritual where it's going to happen every so often. So we did some research as someone who's an experienced investigative reporter, someone who has sources in city government. We made some calls. We did some research. And what we determined, and we're the only city council candidate, by the way, who has a proposal to stop the flooding. What we determined is that backflow preventers in basements or in plumbing systems and sump pumps would be the best way to protect houses. Backflow preventer means your water goes out, the water doesn't come back in. But for them to be effective, every home in that area has to have one. The other thing is sump pumps are there in case the water gets in. We want to push it out because even if you stop the water from coming in through the plumbing, it could seep in through the walls because the water will accumulate outside the house. We want the sump pump to push it back out. Now that in and of itself is not going to solve the problem. And I want to compliment Gary Brown with DWSD and Mayor Duggan for calling for check valves, which are very similar to the backflow preventers. They made that call a week after we put our policy out there, so I'm glad they're catching up with us. Here's the other thing. We have what many people consider to be a curse, tons of vacant land in Detroit. Well, to me, it's time to turn our curse into a blessing, and that vacant land can be used to create green infrastructure, things like bioswales, things like rain gardens. What these are is very heavily landscaped and plumbed and engineered retention ponds, if you will, where the plants retain the water, where the undulations in the ground will store the water. Sometimes there's underground tanks. Sometimes it's just a matter of using different sediments to hold the water. The idea is this system cannot handle all the water that's coming in. So we need to use a way to keep it out of the system. So if the water can't go in the system, where can it go? Into this green infrastructure. And at Jefferson East is doing something with the old Kresge building on Jefferson. And they say one reason why the flooding was so minimal in that building in the heart of the floodland is because they had some green infrastructure around it that diverted the water and held the water until the system could handle it. This sounds like some sort of lefty liberal fantasy. This is real. The city is doing some green infrastructure. And in fact, in Oakman Boulevard, they're using the median as green infrastructure. It can hold 37 million gallons of water. This can work. It's much cheaper than gray infrastructure, which means pipes and plants and busting up concrete. We need to do it. We need to protect our residents. We need to protect our neighbors.
Let's go to kind of what you're hanging your hat on today at the conference, which is about ethics. You have your accountability, accessibility, and Otto's AAA plan to improve government and restore faith in our elected officials. I went through these couple of pages here. One thing that stood out to me right away is you called out the fact that city council members get cars and they get a lot of extra perks. Although they have a salary, people have debated whether or not it's too much or too little. There are a lot of perks that come with being a Detroit city council member. You call for that abolishment. Why?
So it's a hard job, and I don't begrudge the city council members their salary. It's a job that's around the clock. But what I do have a problem with is when you give someone a privilege and they don't appreciate it or they don't respect it. And we've seen city council members, and I'm just going back to 2010, crashing cars, being found passed out behind the wheel on a service drive on a Sunday afternoon because they were too drunk to even stay conscious, speeding at twice the speed limit, nearly twice the speed limit. And then in the case that I find to be the most egregious, Gabe Leland drove his city car to a strip club to help arrange a bribe. That is not why we provide you with a vehicle. And of course, everybody's seen city council members driving their cars as if they were their personal vehicles, and equally egregious and actually a violation of the city's ethics policy, using their car to campaign. That provides an incumbent with an unfair advantage. I'm telling you, I'm putting a lot of miles on my Chrysler and it's all coming out of my pocket. So to me, that's a privilege that's been abused, and so it should be rescinded. But even more importantly, transportation is a major issue for Detroiters. People can't afford cars. If they can afford cars, they can't afford the insurance. If they can afford the car and the insurance, they might not be able to afford the repairs they have to make because our roads are so jacked up. And so anything that you give elected officials that makes their life unlike that of their constituents is a problem. It takes them away from the reality of, is this gas station clean and safe? Can I afford gas? Can I afford insurance? Can I afford repairs? if you're a city council member who has a car, if you crash it, it's replaced and repaired at no cost. You don't need insurance because it's not your car. If you want gas, you go to the city's fuel depot, which is behind a gate and very safe because there's probably cops filling up their tanks at the same time for their city cars. This is not a good use of our resource. And by the way, the cars are pretty nice. They're Explorer XLTs. And I think if you added up the cost of all those cars and all of the other things that go with giving somebody a car, we could probably hire 10 cops. I'd rather have 10 cops than 10 cars for city council members.
And there's some things around receiving gifts and the like. Is that a common thing with city council members to be getting large gifts of, more than $100 or whatever?
Well, if you believe the federal government, they're getting all kinds of gifts and gifts
that's true.
They shouldn't be getting. But I was a reporter for 30 years, and you go to conferences, and as they did here at Mackinac, somebody gives you a backpack, and there's a bag of chips in it, and maybe an iPhone charger. Those are nice things to have. They're not going to influence you. If it all adds up to $100 or less, fine, go with God. But the real problem is when people are given trips. When people are given, lavish meals, they're allowed to stay in fine places where you and I couldn't stay, or if we did, it'd put a big dent in our paycheck. That, again, it's a privilege that the people aren't entitled to, and it's not something that you've earned because of your hard work on council. It's being given to you to try and influence you. And so I'm not saying council members shouldn't go on trips. I'm not saying they shouldn't have this and that and the other thing. I'm just saying we deserve to know what it is. And if it's worth more than $100 and that council member or that city official, because I'm also talking about appointees, I'm talking about the mayor, I'm talking about department heads, I'm talking about people involved with procurement and things like that, which is the buying of things and the letting of contracts and the spending of city dollars. If you want that gift so much, you pay for it out of your pocket. You put that money into the city's general fund and you let us know that you have it so that we can look at that disclosure and say, well, Jer here is taking a lot of trips with so-and-so contractor, and I know all about it, but he's also voted for all their contracts. Maybe that's a problem.
Adding a paper trail, basically.
Transparency, letting people know what happened. I mean, people say they don't want to know how the sausage is made. Well, as we know, sausages can lead to illegality, so we better know as much about the sausage as we possibly can here in the fair city of Detroit.
You talk about the people of Detroit and things that a lot of people can't do. That leads me to think of the idea of look, let's address the elephant in the room. You're a white guy in a super majority black city. What are your commitments to inclusivity, making sure the resurgence includes Detroiters who have been here a long time? And then, how do you feel about things like Black Lives Matter?
Black lives definitely matter. And we've seen it over the years that people who don't look like me have had a lot rougher time with the police. Now, I've been pushed around by the police too, but I didn't grow up wondering whether any traffic stop was going to be my last moment on earth. That's a real concern for a lot of people in our community. Black lives absolutely matter. And we also have to make sure that we're creating opportunities. So what have I done about that? Well, as a reporter, I've always tried to find interns of color. I've always tried to mentor people who come from situations that are less advantageous than mine. I've tried to create opportunity. I've tried to help connect people with jobs, with reference letters to help people get to a point where they can have a feeling of security and opportunity that a lot of people don't always get, particularly in our city. And the other thing is, I think when we talk about the race factor in these elections, in these district elections, in any election, what's important is the people being served. Whoever you are, whatever you look like, male, female, transgender, whatever it is, white, black, yellow, brown, if you are the best person to provide services and opportunity for the people in your district, that's the most important thing. I'm running to make the East Side as good as it can be. I'm running to make the East Side the best district in Detroit and to make sure the people who live in the East Side know that there's somebody there who cares about them, who wants to know what their problems are, who wants to solve their problems, who wants to make their life better. I've been doing that since I was a coach at Baltic Park. I did that as a field team captain, field day captain at St. Clair, where I was on the school commission. I've done that everywhere I've gone. And now I'm just asking my neighbors to give me an opportunity to serve them as an elected official, someone who's been very effective as a volunteer, but someone who can be more effective with 1 of 9 votes on city council and with a staff that will be dedicated to making sure every day we wake up thinking how we can make things better, and we don't go to bed until we're completely exhausted from trying to make things better.
Your district is not in downtown, but you have Stellantis now. I'm so used to calling it Chrysler for years. The Stellantis plant. You have various people interested in doing things on the east side. How do you feel about incentives and development, and maybe even the idea of looking at maybe tax rates in the city to make them more advantageous for residents?
We started to lower the income tax rate for residents during the Kilpatrick administration. That all kind of stalled because the state got into a budget crisis. The city got into a budget crisis. We get a disproportionate amount of our revenue in the city from income taxes because we don't take enough in from property taxes. And I don't want to bore people with sort of a municipal finance lesson, but most cities get all their money, or the bulk of their money, from property taxes. We don't in Detroit because for so long our property did not have as high a value as it should have, and because we have so much vacant and fallow land. I don't mind giving someone an incentive to do something in the city of Detroit, but here's the difference between me and a lot of our council members and a lot of our public officials. I expect you to keep your promise. And if you said you're going to do something and you didn't do something, I'm going to come after you. I'm going to say, we gave you a break. You were supposed to do this. You didn't do this. So we have some options now. Are you going to create 100, 1,000, 5,000 summer internships for kids in our community? Are you going to adopt a park and make it the best park in our community? Are you going to provide grants to food banks, to churches, to nonprofit organizations? I'm not saying we're going to undo the deal, but what I'm saying is we kept our bargain. We gave you the incentive you needed to move here. You have not kept your end of the bargain. And if you have not kept your end of the bargain, you've got to do something to make it right. You've got to do something to make us whole. Detroit retirees know better than anybody else what the term clawback means. When we were bankrupt, we clawed back some of the things that they expected. Well, guess what, corporations? If you make a deal with the city of Detroit and I'm on city council and you don't do what you said you're going to do, I am going to claw back some of what we gave you. I'm a former union negotiator. We make a deal, I expect both sides to keep it. When someone doesn't keep it, I'm going back to the table. I'm going to say, excuse me, remember what we talked about? Remember what we signed? Because if you didn't, I do.
And finally, because time is kind of wrapping up here, transportation. My listeners are very passionate about transportation, moving it forward in the city of Detroit and the region. Right now, we have a crisis with our bus system of missed buses. I know they're trying to adjust the schedules to make it more realistic, all of that stuff. But fundamentally, like, Detroit transportation still has a long way to go. I remember, now it's the 9, but as I mentioned earlier in the show, like, I remember the 20, like the Jefferson bus being like a rock solid thing. And it's not anymore. I get it from listeners. I see it on social media. People, like, I know people in my neighborhood that are getting e-bikes now because they literally can't trust the bus. How quickly can we address this? What can we do to change things and make sure that transportation serves the entire city? Because to me, and I'll add my opinion here, if you don't have good services like transportation, everyone says, pull yourself up by the bootstraps. I believe government's job is to give us boots and straps, and then we can start pulling.
Well, and if you don't have boots, what are you going to pull on? My stepdad used to go to work downtown all the time, taking the Kercheval bus. Now, you can't get to downtown through Kercheval, and I don't think the buses are as reliable as they were 30 years ago. Couple things. My campaign is emphasizing opportunity, safety, and accountability. Opportunity, in part, means creating jobs, opening businesses in our neighborhood so you can live, work, shop, dine, and play within walking distance of your home. That relieves some of the pressure on our public transportation system, but people still are going to need to use public transportation to get to work. I've lived in Europe. I've lived in Chicago. I've lived all over the place. I love public transportation. If you could give me a choice between a train trip and a car trip or a plane trip, I'll take the train every time. We don't have that option here. So here's what we have to do. First of all, there's some immediate improvements we can make. We need bus shelters with, I was at the Macomb Mall just driving by and I saw the bus shelter. I thought, boy, that's really nice. I'm going to stop and take a look at it, see how elaborate it is. Not that elaborate. But then I noticed something. I said, oh, wow, they have monitors and the monitors are telling me when the bus is going to get here.
Yeah, with the e-ink displays. Yeah, they've got them in downtown Ferndale too.
These are fantastic. They can't be that expensive. And so if we don't have reliable buses and we don't have enough buses, you at least should know when that unreliable and not enough bus is going to get there. If you got to wait 3 hours for a bus, you should be able to do it at your home and not freezing your butt off on Jefferson Avenue or on Chalmers or on Lakewood or on Van Dyke. So That's an immediate thing we can do to make an improvement. And the other thing is we're getting a lot of federal money from Uncle Joe. And I think some of that money needs to be used to improve our transportation. More buses, more amenities for bus riders. And basically, we need a more reliable system. We need more routes. We need more frequency on the routes. But we need to make sure that when you set your day around that bus, you can be somewhat informed about when it's expected to show up. So you can either call the boss and say, sorry, I'm going to be late. It's not my fault. It's a number 25, got another flat. Or you can say, ain't going to happen today. I'm going to have to get a ride. I'm going to have to do Uber. But the idea is you know what you're going to get. And once you know what you're going to get, then we want to raise the bar and give you more. But it's got to start with basically taking care of riders and helping them have some sense that that they're not waiting for Godot. They're waiting for a bus, and the bus is going to get there someday.
What do you feel about things like regional transit, an RTA, a bigger plan that maybe provides some trunk route service, those kinds of things? Because a lot of jobs are in the suburbs.
Sure. So this conference, for years, the main theme was we got to fix transportation. And they talked about it every year. They talked about it so many years where it didn't happen that I think they stopped talking about it because they realized it was this bad joke, even among people who believed we needed to do something about it. And on his way out of office, old John Engler just screwed the city of Detroit royally when he was nixing transportation plans. I don't know why we need two bus systems. I think DDOT and SMART should be merged. I've talked to the bus drivers union about this. They agree. And I think one of the key things for us is just to stop fighting with each other. People from the suburbs want to come downtown. People from Detroit want to go to the suburbs, may have to go to the suburbs to get a job. Let's make that easier for everybody. We all benefit from one reliable transportation system. There's savings from economy of scale. And I just, so much of what irks people is they just don't know what they're getting for their tax dollars. We need to provide some certainty. And then once we've established a baseline, we need to build on it. But yeah, there's no reason for two bus systems. And what we need is one reliable bus system. And we need to stop the suburban hating on Detroit and give people a reason in Detroit not to be so frustrated when they're trying to get out to their jobs in the suburbs. The suburbs want Detroiters to come work there. We're good, hardworking people. Their businesses won't succeed without us. Please help us get to work on time.
All right, L Elrick, appreciate your time running for District 4, East Side. People want to know more. Where can they go?
Yeah, I wouldn't be a politician if I didn't say you can find out more at ml4detroit.com. That's ml4detroit.com. We're always looking for volunteers. We're looking for people to contribute. And we're looking for people to tell people that we're worth volunteering and we're worth supporting because we are out to bring honest change to Detroit politics. And today, more than ever, we need it.
And we are done for today. Thanks for listening to Your Daily Detroit. I hope you got something out of that. 2 quick things before I let you go. If you haven't already, follow us wherever you download your favorite shows, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, all the things. Second, we're mostly funded by our Patreon members. You can join us at patreon.com/dailydetroit. You will help keep this show free for everyone else and get some neat swag along the way. With that, I'm J.R. Stays. Take care of each other, and I'll see you around Detroit.